Right, so another batch of the Hunted spoilers to go through, right? And starting off with probably the most intriguing is, of course, the full version of Arakni that is going to feature in the Hunted set. So we have Arakni, Web of Deceit, and Arakni Marionette, right? Not to be confused with Arakni Slip Through the Cracks, which will be the promo reward for attending your pre-release. This is the proper inset, right? Draft playable Arakni Assassin hero. So he is Chaos, so Chaos is going to be a main staple of the set. We're going to see it fleshed out a little bit more, right? More comparable to Draconic. So that's definitely intriguing. But I do think this is worth doing a separate video on, right? Because there's a lot to unpack and discuss and dive into. But we'll go over the card briefly, but stay tuned, right? If that's of interest to you. So your attacks with stealth that are attacking a marked hero get +1, and when this hits, this gets go again. So an interesting mechanic, right? A bit conditional, but still useful nonetheless. In comparison, again, to the other Arakni that we do have, Arakni Slip Through the Cracks, or Arakni Solitary Confinement, right? Again, they have the same ability. First attack with stealth each turn gets go again, right? I kind of like the non-conditional go again a little bit better, but nonetheless interesting. And then we have, at the beginning of your end phase, if an opponent is marked, you become a random agent of chaos. Now, worth remembering, marked is one-off, essentially, right? As soon as you hit a hero, they are no longer marked. You have to reset up a mark to get the stealth effect, or, again, you have to leave marked up for the remainder of the turn to actually trigger this Agent of Chaos effect. Now, we don't know what the Agents of Chaos are just yet, but they should be spoiled fairly soon. I believe there's one, spoiler branch that has the 6 slots, so I assume that's going to be the Agents of Chaos. But until we know more about, how they scale, whether or not they are all decent, some decent, right? We can't really, consider this great or bad, because it is just a random chance to gain X ability for X turn and whatever the conditional effects are. But again, a lot to dive into, so we'll leave it there, and we'll pick up on Arakni in another one. But on to the other spoiled cards, starting off with Thick Hide Hunter, right? A 2 for 6 in yellow, and it also blocks for 6, so quite a nice design card to really help out Brute's game plan. So when this attacks or defends, discard a random card. Now, I really wish that this would work on both ends with Reiner's actual ability, but Reiner is conditional. When you discard a card with 6 or more during your action phase, you get the Intimidate proc, meaning that you can't defend with this and then intimidate your opponent. Otherwise, that'd be so nice, right? To get that 6 block value, right? So you don't care about the fact that you've discarded a card, and then you're also impeding your opponent's turn. But nonetheless, right? It being yellow, it being a 6 is beautiful for both Reiner and KO, right? It gives KO a little bit more resources to work with while still hitting his theme of 5 or greater attack, right? So it is a nice Brute card, but it is kind of vanilla in a sense. But it does exactly what, we want the expansion slot to do, and that is shore up some of the gaps in X class. After that, we have Tremor Shield Sabatons. I don't like this card, right? Straight up, I don't see the value of this card. If it was in any class but Guardian, I would really like it. But the fact that it's in Guardian, I can't get behind it. So, instant, destroy this, prevent the next 1 arcane damage that will be dealt to you this turn. If you've controlled a Seismic Surge token this turn, instead prevent the next 2 arcane damage, right? Also has Blade Break and 1 block. If this had Temper, right, Temper 2, I think beautiful. As it stands currently, I don't understand its value, right? So do correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, if you're in a matchup that demands, arcane damage prevention, aren't you significantly better off just still taking Arcane Barrier, right, through the Null Rune Boots? Because you're Guardian. You're already one of the most tankiest equipment-wise heroes, not to mention, additional card support for blocking and defending. So do you really need a one-off arcane prevention, right? Sure, it's 2, so that's kind of nice, but it's one-off. And then potentially a 1 block if the situation demands it, right? Again, if it's in a physical match where you don't need any arcane prevention, right? You're going to take Civic Steps because you get more block out of it, right? If you're Elemental, you're going to take the new Earth Boots, because again, you'll get more block value out of it. It's just, yeah, it's a weird point for me, right? Again, if it had that Temper, so you could get 2 block and some arcane prevention, I think it'd be a beautiful split design leg piece, right? and, you know, it would definitely outpace Civic Steps in that regard. Maybe if you had, you know, Guardwell with 2 block or something like that. So again, it was a bit more situational. But yeah, if you're in a physical matchup, are you not just going to take the more physical block? And if you're in an arcane matchup, aren't you just going to take the greater arcane barrier? Anyway, that's my 2 cents. If I'm missing the point of this, do let me know, right? I mean, you can block with it and then still use the instant proc, so I guess it is kind of nice against Runeblade in that regard, but yeah, no, I one or the other, right? Depending on what the matchup demands. That's my opinion. Okay, and then a much better Guardian card in my opinion as well, right? Rolling Fissure X1, which is interesting, right? Because this is the first time we're seeing that cost mechanic, and I assume it is X plus 1, right? Not X1, right? Not a new way to present just 1X. So yeah, I will assume it is, you know, it destroy an aura with X cost or less. So for instance, if you want X cost or less to be 2, you're paying 3 for this card, right? Does that make sense? So destroy an aura with X or less, then you may destroy a seismic surge you control, right? There's a comma there, so that's very much worth noting, because if you do, repeat this process. So you can destroy essentially as many auras on board as you have seismic surge tokens. Worth noting, seismic surge does destroy itself at the beginning of your turn, right? So you can't use it in that sense where you have, you know, a whole amount of seismic surge built up from your previous turn to then go into this in the following turn, right? That doesn't quite work. You need to generate the seismic surge on the turn you're going to play Rolling Fissure, but nonetheless, it is a nice chunk of aura disruption that is highly flexible depending on the matchup you're going into, especially because, you know, a 1-cost destroy as many auras as you have seismic surge that costs 0 is kind of fantastic. It has go again, blocks for 3, and it's also blue, right? So yeah, it is a super useful card, right? It highlights tectonic plating, just having that ability to pay 1 extra resource now, make sure you have a seismic surge to get 2 procs out of Rolling Fissure. Then you also have cards like Tectonic Rift that have kind of been a little underwhelming, now having a much better use, right? Create X seismic surge tokens, so say 3, right? Pay 1 extra, now you can Rolling Fissure your opponent's auras. And then, you know, you also, of course, have the grandeur of Valahai, right? The Guardian Fable, which is definitely a lot better now because you pitch this into Rolling Fissure, and there you go, you've got your 2 procs. So yeah, really nice, just kit card, right? For Guardian, especially with the current meta, right? Just Rolling Fissure away as many tokens as you can against Enigma, right? And have a nice day. Right, and then we have a Ranger Defense Reaction Trap. Chain Reaction. Boy, is this card super exciting. So, yellow, 0 cost. When this defends an attack with Go Again, you may turn a non-attack action card in your arsenal face up. If you do, you may play it this turn as though it were instant, right? So worth noting, as say Riptide, you can play this and instantly slot a card into your arsenal, so fantastic. As a Daylight, you will have to have a card pre-set up, but the fact that you can now play X card as instant is just beautiful, right? Off the top of your head, you've got cards like Truce to bait your opponent into triggering the draw effect. You have cards like Warmonger's Diplomacy to really screw up your opponent's turn now that you know what they're trying to do. And then you just have, you know, optional other cards through Ranger and Generic, just stuff that you can now play at an instant speed and get value out of, right? Not worrying whether or not they have Go Again. So, for instance, Plan for the Worst, which was, you know, mediocre to kind of underwhelming because it didn't have Go Again or wasn't an instant, now being a really nice tech card for Riptide coming off of the back of this, right? You put this into your arsenal, you get to then get an extra trap, right? Or potentially, you know, an extra couple of traps depending on what cards you shuffle back, right? So, really nice defensive card with a lot of versatility to it. So, yeah, I really like it, right? Worth noting, the utility that I'd probably get out of it is 3 of a kind. And you'll have to clarify for me whether or not blocking counts as playing cards. Otherwise, 3 of a kind would only shut down your ability to play, say, defense reactions, right? So, you go chain reaction into 3 of a kind to refill up your hand and just have a really defensive turn, right? That seems kind of nice to me, being able to play it at instant speed, or even just to set up your following turn, restock your hand a little bit to make sure that you maintain tempo, right? I love it, just comboing with 3 of a kind. I think it gives a lot more value back to 3 of a kind. I'm curious if it might even make 3 of a kind border on being a bit problematic again, given LSS's whole ruling towards draw in its current iteration. After that, we have Warcry of Balana. Yellow, 0 cost, right? Light Warrior attack reaction. Target Rathe gets +2 this turn. So that's already a very nice effect, right? +2 for the entire turn. But now it has a unique clause, right? It is both a Light Warrior attack reaction and the most disgusting counter card that I think we're going to get in Flesh and Blood. So, instant, discard this, banish X cards from your soul. The next time target weapon deals X or less damage to you this turn, deal that much damage to its controller. That damage can't be prevented, right? So nice old Uno reverse card, depending on the matchup, again, right? Whether or not your opponent is heavy on their weapons, but again, worth remembering, all of Enigma's auras do count as weapons, so it's very nice in that regard. So yeah, stock up your soul, and then once you're at X threshold, right, it just becomes a, well, too bad, my instant procs before your damage resolves, so yeah, I win, right? But talking about the target, Rathe gets +2 this entire turn. For instance, with Luminar's Ascension is a +1, plus then you have the charge ability, so you're looking at swinging for Rathe across your turn for 6, and you're most likely going to get at least 2 swings out of that, right? If not more. So that's already a nice amount of damage to have on Rathe to then also trigger the charge effects from Luminar's Ascension, right? And just cycle. It's just a super nice tech card for Boltyn. And again, it's that flexibility of either being a decent push in tempo on your turn or something you save for the late game and becoming this just counter card, right? Depending on what your opponent's going to do in X turn, right? You just stockpile X cards in your soul for later, for a rainy day, and then you walk right them. Yeah, very nice. And then lastly, we have Klloo, right? So very interesting for Shadow Runeblade. 0 cost, right? You may play this from your back zone. If a hero has lost life this turn, you may play this as though it were instant. Each hero banishes a card from their hand, right? So worth noting, send it to your graveyard, find a way to banish it, play it twice. But the clause that we really want to zero in on is, of course, that if a hero has lost life this turn, you may play this as though it were instant, meaning that your opponent starts to wail on you. Okay, we'll just shut down the remainder of their turn by making them banish a card, right? It's what we want from Reinhar's Intimidate, now in a card for Shadow Runeblade. So yeah, I think it is wonderful, right, to have this type of interaction. We don't want to go overboard, but this is a nice way to handle it. So, you know, potentially you're just using it to get X thing across on your turn, right, and then you get to your banish zone, and you set it up for your future turn to just make sure, you know, a little bit of a lifeline, right? Once you start taking damage from your opponent, you use this to make sure that they can't follow through with X other attack or anything else that they're doing on their turn. So yeah, it's a nice amount of disruption for Shadow Runeblade. So again, overall, I feel like this is the highest of quality, right, in terms of fleshing out X classes toolkits that we've gotten so far when it comes to the expansion slot, which is wonderful to see, right? Super excited to mess around with all these cards and see, you know, what exactly you can do with them in a bit more of a drastic sense, especially chain reaction, right? Again, God, I'm drooling over chain reaction into 3 of a kind, right? But nonetheless, hope you enjoyed. And yeah, stay tuned. We will discuss Arakni in a bit more detail coming up soon. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah.